Hello and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 3 Reload podcast where we play through Persona 3 Reload in real time along with the in-game calendar. The we that I am talking about is myself, Jonathan Dornbush, and my co-host, Tom Marks. Tom, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here, as always.
It'd be really weird if we started the show and you're like, I just don't want to be here. I'm sick of this.
Yeah,
I'm over it. The vibes. Yeah, it's 6 weeks in.
I didn't realize it was the whole year again. I thought this was like the abridged version.
Sure. Yeah, like Dragon Ball Z Kai or whatever, where we were just watching like 5-minute installments. Yeah. No, we are playing the full year of, or however long it goes. It's definitely a mystery that you can't Google search the result for online. But no, this week we're specifically talking about the dates of May 18th through May 25th. 2009 to be precise. It is, of course, everyone's favorite time in a Persona game, midterms, which means time goes by really quick. For those people who are maybe just playing Persona 3 Reload as their first Persona game, it might feel weird to suddenly have control taken away from you at this point in the game. We'll get into it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about some of the other free time as well. We also have a great number of questions to get to from our wonderful community, so thank you to everyone who wrote in with those. But yeah, I'm excited to jump in for this week. Before we do, we have all of our usual housekeeping at the top of the show. So here we go with, of course, our confidant call out. This is a huge call out and thank you to all of the Palace Ruler tier members over at the Patreon, which is patreon.com/takeyourtime. Huge thank you to everyone who is contributing to supporting the show, helping us make it happen, and just being wonderful, wonderful folk. Those people at that tier that I'd like to call out are Akechi is a Jelly Bean, always a fun way to start the list. Astral Clock Tower, Cameron C, Dallas, Damon, Dan F, Danimal Lover 01, Default Titus, Dexter, Goro Akechi, Keegan H, Michael V, Philip S, Sam K, Sarah M, Shade, Tekma, Willie Wang Wang, and Zachary L. Thank you all so much for contributing. As we've said before, it means so much to us. We could not be doing this without y'all, so thank you for your contributions, and to everyone who is supporting us over at the Patreon. If you would like to find out about how you can do that and get episodes a day early, ad-free, bonus episodes, contribute to the show with questions, and plenty more, chatting with the community and just being a wonderful part of this, you can head over. We have several tiers over at patreon.com/takeyourtime. But without further ado, I want to get to the most important thing I think of this week, because it is midterms after all. It's the pop quiz result.
Yeah, we had a funny one from last week, which was if you hung out with Junpei, you had to go to the arcade, so probably everyone has seen the arcade by now, hopefully. And the 3 arcade machines, to refresh, were the Super Arcade game, Super Game Space Shot. Very interesting game. But I said there was another phrase on all 3 of those machines that was shared, and I asked, what is that phrase? And I think we had a correct answer, 2 correct answers with 2 different answers. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so if you want to talk about how sneaky son of a gun you are, Tom, I wrote down in my notes basically like very good game. I was thinking of the very interesting game machine, but technically I was wrong, but I wasn't far off. Because
correct. This is a little bit of a trick. Yeah, there's 2 answers. The answer that is the kind of answer I was looking for was at the top of each machine, above the title of the game, it says, "Let's enjoy playing," which I just love. It's very cute, sort of wherever that translation came from. But every game also has like a subtitle that is also very interesting game. So technically very interesting game is also a phrase that's on all 3 machines, but the other phrase, because that is literally one of the names, was "Let's enjoy playing." So it's sort of both.
Which I love. So congratulations for the very interesting game answer for Cameron C. And congratulations to Akechi as a Jelly Bean for the "Let's enjoy playing" answer. They were lamenting that they haven't gotten any questions right. You broke that streak this week with this one, even though it was a bit of a trick.
I mean, it's just so funny because they all say "Let's enjoy playing" as like a title kind of at the top, but then literally it says Super Arcade Game, very interesting game, Super Game Space Shot, very interesting game, very interesting game, very interesting game. So like,
how interesting must that game be? Right?
It must be very, very interesting.
I wish more games had generic titles like that. It would just be... there's probably like shovelware on Steam and everywhere else that is just game number 1, game number 2. I love... There's always those weird random games you can get, like... Get a PlayStation Platinum trophy in 5 minutes by buying this game, and it's called, like, How Do You Press Button? So, yeah, that's what the vibe is here, so I appreciate it. But no, thank you to those who got it right. If I've missed anyone, apologies based on, of course, scheduling. Sometimes answers come in later than we record. And really, that's your fault. Why weren't you earlier? You should have been there. No. Apologies to those who we may have missed, but thank you to those who wrote in with the correct answer and for everyone else who played along at home. But yeah, I think, without further ado, we can jump into this week that is midterms. As we had mentioned last week, we extended this phase a little bit to include an extra day because it lets us get in the sort of totality of midterms, including results, which is a nice little buffer. Right. Look, midterms are not the most exciting part. Exams are not the most exciting part of any Persona game. It is a part of the game where they take a lot of power away from you. Time goes by really quick. I kind of like it as a bit of a reprieve, to be honest. Like, it's weird. I love these games, but it is kind of nice to be in the midst of having played 25, 30 hours, and then just, time goes by a little quick here. Cool. That means we're going to get to something good sooner.
Yeah, it essentially feels like the Persona version of a time jump. Right? Like, the first time they time jumped, they had to knock you out for 10 days and you were, like, basically in a coma, and they just didn't ever really address that. I prefer, hey, you're just going to be in midterms for 6 days. It really does feel like we want to get to the next full moon or whatever a little bit quicker, and so we're just going to fold this in as part of the story. But also, I don't mind it thematically either. Like you said, it's a nice little reprieve. It's fun that they embrace this part of school life fully rather than just saying, we have tests and, you take the tests in the background and then you go and do your normal stuff. I don't mind it by any means. And I also like that it takes the actual questions from the months earlier and folds them into this, so you can actually try to test your knowledge of what you supposedly learned in class. It's very cute.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, sometimes those questions when they come in on a regular day of school feel like so out of the blue. I have no idea what the right answer could be unless I Google this. So it is kind of nice to get a second chance sometimes where it is, I remember that one. I did pay attention in class. It is that kind of nice. It's a surprisingly accurate way of making you feel good about paying attention in class as a student.
Yeah.
It is a thing, to your point, too, where I do appreciate that they are really mimicking a part of the school life. Like, this is a little bit of a life sim in that aspect of the game, and it works even though it is fundamentally a boring part of life / arguably the game. But I don't hate that it's there in any way necessarily. No. It's really interesting.
It really is just sort of, hey, let's get to the next thing. And it goes, if it was laborious, I feel like if it was, this week was 6 days of doing some task over and over again, it would be bad, right? And so the idea that each of these days takes a minute tops, and then it's just on to the next one, you're already in class answering the next question, is, that's the right way to do something like this if you're going to make this last for 6 days like that.
Totally. And it makes so much sense for the character of, I wasn't going out hanging with an old couple at the bookstore when I had exams to study for. I wasn't going to work at the cafe. I have books to read. Like, it fits within the vibe pretty well. So I do appreciate that. Obviously, it means there's less to discuss for this week, but I think we'll have some of those extra days at the end to dip into. But yeah, for those... I'd be curious to think for those who this is their first time experiencing it, what y'all think of this popping up. Might feel a bit strange on a first go, but yeah, it is what it is. Just to run it down, the first day there's no question, right?
Yeah, you just have a thing where I think for me it says, I feel like I did well, which I assume means that this is the day where or this and the last day are sort of the days that are influenced by your academic score in terms of what you're going to say there.
Yeah. And of course we are both sterling little smarty pantses with our level 3 academics that we got on the last day.
Above average.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take it at this point. If it means I get a little gift, that's all that matters. So May 18th, honestly, to go through these, I'll be frank, I don't remember what we did with them during the Persona 5 run. I think we just ran through. I just kind of have what each day's question was. So we could just run that down. Because you don't have free time. You can't do anything. So May 18th, literally no question. You get a little bit of dialogue. You move on. The time cycle goes again. I do want to say, because I think we mentioned it early on, but you get to really appreciate it just because you can see it so frequently here. I love the design of like the day passing symbols and the simplicity of it and the way it mirrors a clock movement. It's a great little design. I love it.
Agreed.
May 19th. May Blues.
Yes, this was the May sickness question coming back.
What a thrill. I want to dive in for maybe like 20 minutes here and really distill this question down if that works for you.
There was, I like the other answers. A lot of the other answers didn't really matter. I was trying to think of maybe I would use these for like a pop quiz question. Ooh. But the other answers you can do for what is the other name for May sickness are May Blues, Moody Blues, May Days, and then Dropsy. Not sure why Dropsy's in there, but it's a very good answer.
Wasn't that like a Devolver indie game about a sad clown? Wasn't that sad clown
I think
game?
it was.
I think that was Dropsy the sad clown that I feel like Devolver had a clown go to certain gaming outlets.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I feel like that happened. Anyway. Yeah.
I won't get into the questions because all the other answers are like not very funny, but I thought Dropsy was very funny.
Dropsy is very good. Moving on from there, May 20th. What'd you do?
This was the pendulum question, right?
Indeed, yes. Yeah, the pendulum question came back in. May 21st was the reframing of the pantograph, so you didn't answer exactly the same as you did in class, but you get a different variation of the question, which I like when they do this, because it isn't just here's the exact answer again. It does make you think about what you learned, which is nice.
Yeah.
May 22nd. Is this the middens I have written down?
Yeah, this is the one. So this is the only of these 4 questions that I wasn't fully sure about. The other 3 I just remembered. This one I got right, because the way I do this is I want to make sure I get them right, but I also want to try. So I say what my guess is going to be and then confirm online that it is correct before actually entering it. So I got this one right, but it was the only one where I was not sure.
That's fair. I do the same exact thing, to be fair. I don't know if Persona purists would be upset about that. I don't want to get these wrong, and it doesn't matter. It's not real. It's fine. I didn't
spend 10,000 yen at the shrine last week to fail the middens question and not get that gift.
That's damn right. You didn't go through all that stress. But yeah, that's the middens question. And then May 23rd is the final day of midterms, and nothing really happens in terms of midterms. It's just, as you said, some incidental dialogue about how you feel you're doing, but this then does turn into a day. Yeah,
well, so and that day starts too with Akihiko meeting you before class and asking you to stay the team leader essentially after he comes back, which is a funny little thing because I didn't even consider the fact that Akihiko was probably the leader when it was only 3 of them or whatever.
Well, he's been so out of commission, so it's like you don't really think of him that much in a leadership role. Even if he's older, he has this confidence to him. At least that's how I read him very much. But you're just so instantly thrown into the leader position that, when he says it, I'm like, oh, I guess, I'll take. I mean, also, what are you going to do? Tell me to stop? Then the game is over. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so it's a nice little reminder too that he'll be back in Tartarus officially after all this. So we'll get to have that extra party member, which we'll talk about when we talk about Tartarus. I don't know if you've gone in, but no spoilers yet.
I did not go in this week, so
fair
I'm
enough.
Excited to go. We can talk about it next week for sure, I think.
Yeah, I think next week is a good time to talk about the next section of Tartarus. But yeah, you have that early conversation with him, and then you get a day of free time. And again, kind of similar to other events that are happening. Obviously, midterms is not world-ending related, though it might feel like it when you're young. This is just life keeps going on. You have free time again. You have stuff you can do, and the world opens back up. And luckily, people aren't busy anymore. You can see them, and it's nice. So who did you hang out with?
Come back.
Yeah.
Well, first I talked to Chihiro.
Good call.
And I got her to. I said we should hang out, and she said I gotta think about it. So I think I'm close on that one. And then I ended up spending time with Yuko.
Nice.
Because she was back.
Cool. Yeah, I won't spoil about Chihiro, but we'll probably be able to talk about them in the near future. So yeah.
I did see the name pop up on the network thing, so I assume I'm not far behind on that one.
Oh, the
like the what other people did.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, then you're in a good place. Cool. After we got our time back and were free from exams, I went to go do some fusions because I needed them to hang out with people. And those students were back, and this was perhaps a bad use of time in that consideration. I just wanted to jump into it, so I hung out with Micah. Didn't want to abandon them, Wanted to make sure the Red Bull...
I haven't talked to that girl in 2 weeks.
She's just been chugging Mad Bull every day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wanted to hang out with Yuko both because she's a student, but also I just really am enjoying that character. So I got her up to rank 3, and I sort of started to dive into her backstory a little bit more. And I do want to hang out with Maiko too. She seems fun. Also, that storyline. Well, not the storyline doesn't seem fun, but that as a confidant seems fun. But yeah, I really am enjoying Yuko right now, so I wanted to meet her more.
Yeah, Yuko was an early favorite of mine on my first playthrough. I think she's just a really good, fun, interesting character to get to learn about that is so to the side of what you're doing. And I appreciate the nuance kind of to her that it brings. But yeah, that brings us to the evening. As we get there again, a little bit of reminder that Akihiko is fully healed as you're talking to people and all that. He really wants to get back into the fight. And then we learn that they have found another Persona user, and they ask us about a person named Fuka Yamagishi. She apparently gets sick a lot, is what we know about her. She was at the same hospital as Akihiko, which is why we have learned about her. So she may not even be able to fight because of that condition, is kind of what we get the sense. So there's a little bit of, are we going to actually get her to join the team? Maybe. What's the point there? Junpei is surprised we're giving up so soon, presumably because it is girl, and girl not being part of group is sad for Junpei.
Yeah, he makes some gross jokes about giving her private lessons. And I appreciated that joke because I was like, that's kind of a gross joke. And then the immediate follow to it is Yukari staring bullets through him.
I love that. Yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction to remember because the Persona series does have some gross stuff occasionally, or creeps, but Junpei being a creep and then everyone's reaction to him being a creep is you're a creep. Makes it so it's not the game being gross. It's they intentionally made that character gross, right? Which I appreciate.
No, totally. It is not a case of, what are you going to do? Creepy guys will be creepy. Because, also, it's funny, I was thinking about this as I was playing, and especially in this conversation. I went to an all-boys high school. Teenage boys, just the worst in the pits. Just, you don't want to talk to them. They are disgusting little ogres. So, not an unfair depiction, I would say.
Sure.
But at the same time, it doesn't feel like the game is yeah, Junpei, you go be a weird little horn dog. It is kind of also acknowledging, hey, this is messed up, man. And I do as you said, everyone notices that he's disappointed that it's not the girl can't join the group.
Right, yeah.
It's, I do appreciate that kind of refuting of Junpei and kind of his behavior there. But yeah, it's, as we get a tease, who knows, it may never pay off. You got the full name of this character, so they may never appear again.
I do like the idea that Akihiko was in the hospital overnight. That's a really interesting way to meet other people who experience the dark hour, is if you're in a public space that you had to spend the night and you're just oh, this other human is awake right now. therefore we share a thing that we didn't know we did. Like that's a very cool sort of way to have met this character, even though it's a little disappointing that it happened off camera.
Yes, yeah. No, I get what you mean. I like we were talking a little bit of the realities of the dark hour when you think about planes or cars and all that sort of stuff, but I do like that there's at least a little investigation of, what is it like outside the confines of us thinking about the dark hour in the dorm or at Tartarus?
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of that also, that just brought to mind something for me. Oh, you mentioning that. Have you explored the dorm much? Like, have you gone up and down at all?
I've walked up and down it a few times. I've checked out some rooms here and there, but I haven't I think I've clicked on everything you can click on.
That's
but
fair.
Not thoroughly recently.
With just this being a short week and you mentioning that, I was just like, oh yeah, I just want to make sure like you've done that, because it's a funny thing where you get to know where people's rooms are and what rooms are empty. Definitely maybe not an indication that some of those rooms might be full in the future, but it is fun to just get a sense of the scale of the place. We talked about the video previously, so you know about the control room, of course. And then, yeah, it's just for those who haven't looked through, it's worth just kind of scaling up and down and getting a sense of the space. But yeah.
Cool.
What did you do that evening after all this conversation?
Well, the shopping items arrived, so that was nice.
Very
and
true.
then I have something in my notes that just says groovy guy. Oh, yeah, I remember. I went to Escapade, the club. And there's some new dialogue there, and there's a guy who's dancing, one of the few people moving, and he asks, I think, are you feeling the groove? And if you say yes, he's like, aw, I'm jealous. And then if you say no, he goes on this long tirade about like, yeah, man, I'm just not feeling very good either. I'm pretty down. I came to the club because I thought I maybe would like get me in a better mood, but I just can't find my groove. And I'm like, wow, this is very sad that this poor man dancing alone in this club, just trying to cheer himself up.
And you could totally miss that. It is but it's such a fun, small, little character thing. That's why, again, I will say that about this game, even more than Persona 5, because 5 is flashier to a certain extent. It's like, you should be going around and talking to everyone and getting these little bits and morsels, because it's really embedded in the world in a fun way.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go to Tartarus this week because they teased this person, and I know Akihiko's back, but then also Monday is the sale day for the weapons shop, and so I was like, oh, maybe I'll outfit Akihiko, or maybe this other person I'll learn more about. So I didn't want to go to Tartarus right away. This is the other thing that I've sort of realized is there's really not a rush to go necessarily, as far as I can tell yet. I mean, maybe that will change in the future, but at least right now they want you to go, and it makes sense to go before the full moon, obviously, because you want to be leveled or whatever, but there's not this huge pressure to do it right away if you don't want to, especially when there are these sale days that you can try to sort of plan your schedule around a little bit more. So with that all said, I ended up just going to the computer store and buying the Muscle Bootcamp software and using that, because I assumed that it was the companion to the SP up one and just got my HP up, and that's what it did, but I wanted to confirm that. So it got 7 max HP.
It's a good bonus. It's nothing to sneeze at. Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from. It's an interesting balance here, and we'll talk about it more as we've experienced Tartarus a bit more, but especially, coming from the P5 background, where every day a character is reminding you, hey, the deadline's approaching. We got to make sure we go check in with, do the thing before the deadline. When the full moon is roughly coming, but other than that, there's not this, mostly just when you talk to people, they'll be like, hey, do you want to go? I'm ready for a fight if you want to. But that's kind of the extent of it here. Yeah. For me, I just used the PC. I looked up the Iwatodai forum.
Okay,
one.
Cool.
So, yeah, I got that. And, I'm trying to knock those out earlier because I left a lot of codes or URLs, until later on. And I think it's helpful to do them as early as you can if you don't have much else going on in the evening.
Here's a semi-spoilery but not very important question. Does it ever give you an indication that more URLs are available, or do you just got to check on that guy occasionally?
I don't remember one. It is possible I missed something, but I was actually going to say roughly go check in maybe a little bit after each full moon. Gotcha. I don't remember how often it restocks. I don't even think it is necessarily that often. But even if it is, I think that's just like a good marker to go check, is both there and honestly the URL store. The store where you go to buy websites as well, as we all remember doing.
Yes.
You should go check that one out. Like roughly once a month, go check on in. Just worth the average. I think it eventually they stalled out. I don't remember the exact date. Someone in the comments might remember. But it's good to check in. But it won't be like, hey, maybe there's new stuff to my memory unless I missed a text, maybe.
Yeah, I initially found myself thinking that this world was surprisingly small, like limited in how many places there are. And now I'm really glad that it's as intimate as it is, because there's a lot of stuff to keep up with and a lot of stuff to check, even if it's just these little conversations.
Totally. I think it is contained, but not necessarily lacking.
Yeah, exactly.
At least so far. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that is worth checking in repeatedly. I don't think too spoilery a thing to say.
Sure.
Moving on from there, May 24th. I don't know what time it is. If only the real world could tell me what time it was. May 24th. What did you do? We got a Sunday going on, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So it's
day off. So I went to the shopping thing. I'm just money, just so poor all the time. It's
rough, right?
I mean, I know I spent 10,000 yen last week, and that was bad. But
you needed to.
The beginner cooking set was the item in the shopping channel, and it was like 5,000 yen. It was a ton. So that was like most of my money. But I bought it because it was a special piece of armor, and how can you say no?
That is true of most of these, honestly. The shopping network, when it happens, I'll regret it if I don't get it, even if I don't end up using those items. It's a very RPG mentality thing of, well, it's the only chance I can get this time. Let me get it. And it works. It really works on that kind of mental loop.
So I wanted to hang out with Maya, but this was a day where Kenji texts you and says, hey, do you want to do a special hangout? And so I ended up just doing that.
How dare you? How dare you disappoint our best friend, the person we don't know who it could be on the computer, but I hung out with Maya. That's what I did today.
Oh, okay.
For what it's worth, because I know I said this a few weeks ago, you'll have time, because I know Maya's only available essentially once a week. You'll have the chance. It's not going to be a thing unless you just really ignore them on Sundays, where you should, if you're getting into the third act of the game and you maybe haven't finished, it might feel a little weird, but I think you'll be able to get to them no problem. So I wouldn't worry.
Sure. Well, this Kenji, because this is not a spoiler, right? Because you can't ever see this conversation again.
I believe so, yeah.
He tells you his creepy plan to ask out the teacher.
Wait, did you get a rank up though?
No.
Oh.
This was not it was just what he's going to do.
Okay.
And his plan is to say to the teacher, like, I can't remember what exactly it was. It was like him being plan. Like, hey, I need help with my assignment. And then she's going to be like, I'll do anything to help you. It's just like very stupid role play. And of course we had to do what you were saying to get the most points, which is just pander to him and say, yeah, that's a great idea.
Look, if you can be everyone's hype man, favorite person in the world, you'll get all those friendship points. Yeah. Friends don't need the truth. They just need a good yes.
That didn't fully pay off with Yuko this week.
That's true. Yeah. It doesn't it's true until it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's not quite what you need to do. It's interesting.
Yeah. I think we can talk about it more as we go on. I think it speaks to, I will retract my statement a little bit, and it is not true for everyone. And I think it is very telling what characters that is like an absolute for and which it isn't.
Yeah, totally.
It is a very interesting pattern. You may have already noticed, but yeah, it's an interesting one. But cool. So I think it's worth doing those again. you should be fine when it comes to Maya. But cool. Yeah, I did that. And then what'd you do in the evening?
Evening, I went and bought... I decided I want to try to get my courage up. I can't remember why. Oh, I was going to... It's kind of angling towards the Wild Duck Burger Challenge thing. And so I bought the Typing Ghoul game, which is just typing of the dead, basically.
Yeah.
And played that for courage.
Nice. Not too bad. I also used the PC. You had unlocked it last week, I believe, so I did the Umiushi bowl.
Yeah.
So just wanted to get that out of the way. Good item to be able to get. And yeah, moved on with my wonderful Sunday.
I'm very excited for the fridge to be cleared out next week.
Yes, of course. Otherwise, what could you do? There's nothing to be able to use in the fridge, the very packed fridge.
There's no solution.
Anyway, moving on to May 25th, already the end of our week. What a week it has been. May 25th, we get a conversation in the morning. Takaba talks about Junpei leaving early to beg teachers for a higher score.
Yeah.
Because if anyone would think that would work, it would be Junpei. Mentions Fuka during this conversation, but just a kind of like light nod to them. Nothing huge.
Right.
At lunch, we learn results are up. And Tom, how did you do?
I got bad score. I've been lying this whole time. No,
You're a real
got
Junpei.
top of the class. Yeah, top of the class.
Congratulations. Highest score in the grade? Me too. We're a bunch of smarty boys.
And just like you said, Jonathan, because we're the smartest kid in the whole grade, everyone thinks we're really cool, and so our charm goes up.
Hell yeah. Just like in real life to me, when I got number 1 in my freshman year, everyone loved me, and I definitely didn't get bullied more. Haha, I'm not crying on the inside. But yes, your charm goes up depending on how you do. I believe, again, if you, to my memory, since I had level 2 last time and was seething about it ever since, you do well. I think you maybe get 1 less point of charm. I forget exactly how the math works out. But I think it tells you you're in the top 10.
Right.
You know, let us know out there how you did. No shame if you were a Junpei or if you were an us. Let us know.
No shame if you were a Junpei.
No shame if you were a Junpei.
Okay.
No, it is a funny thing. I think someone mentioned, I believe Francis in the Patreon mentioned, they were like, yeah, I did not get level 3 in academics because I did not want to focus on doing that at the beginning of this RPG. Like, that wasn't what I cared about doing. And that's fair. Again,
totally.
There's no exact right way to play this if you're enjoying what you're doing. So don't worry about it. It just means Mitsuru doesn't love you as much. And how does that feel, you idiots? No, it's play how you want. Hey, I've worked hard for this just because you got it too. I turn heel. This is when I turn heel on the podcast. But no, yeah, it's a nice little end to a stressful week.
Yeah, and then there's there's a teacher thing where the teacher just is going over the test and sort of just ribbing the class for like, how could you get this section wrong? This was the gimme section.
The teachers are great. I can't get over how fun they are in this game in terms of just personality. It works every conversation.
Yeah. And I stayed awake during that section. I don't know about you.
Of course. Oh, I'm not giving up anytime soon. The academics curve doesn't stop here. It still will be a lot more points. So stay awake in class, kids. It's good for your health.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I was going to go to sleep because I wanted to try to get more courage, but then I realized if I have opportunities to just sort of weave in an extra point of academics there for free, I probably just should.
That's my thing. I think it's the slightest of spoilery things. The study sessions we went through, those aren't the last study sessions in the game. So the game will give you opportunities to bank a lot of points in a short window, but it doesn't hurt to take these opportunities when they come up. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from there, we do have a free afternoon. So what did you do?
Well, first I went and talked to Mitsuru at the school.
Very good.
Got a gift.
Nice.
So this was you get 4 different things of incense to, I think, increase the stats of personas. Is that what incense does? I believe
that's, yes. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And then also got that special choker. And I assume if you have level 2 academics, you always get the incense, and then if you get level 3 academics, you get the choker?
I believe the choker is for 3 because I feel like I got incense earlier. So yeah, you get the power, guard, speed, and magic incenses when you see her.
Yeah.
I believe if you don't do this day, you can still claim them in a near future day. I don't know if it expires at some point. I would assume it does, but you can get those if you didn't immediately go. But yes, you get those, and then I do believe the choker is a level 3 bonus exclusive for how smart you are.
Yeah, and it's real good. It's 5 endurance.
Yeah.
So that's a not insignificant stat boost, and it is also relevant to one of my least favorite RPG tropes ever, which is, this is a total tangent, but I immediately equipped this on the protagonist because I despise RPGs that make it if your lead character dies, you just lose. I think that is a bad mechanic in every game it is part of. Because Yukari has healing magic, and I have resurrection items, and any one of those people could use them, but I just lose if my main person dies, and that's dumb. So I gave them +5 endurance.
Yeah, it is a thing we dealt with in Persona 5. I think if you are on easy difficulty, you get to just auto-revive, is how it used to work. I don't remember if it still does that here. But yeah, it's frustrating. There's no way around it. I get the sense of wanting to show how powerful an enemy can be, but when it literally is so out of your hands and a pure roll of the virtual dice that you don't see, it feels so cheap anytime it happens. It just sucks.
It just feels unnecessary, but that's neither here nor there.
Hey, we may encounter it later on. So anyway, yeah, that is a reasonable thing to equip immediately. Did you mention what you did after all that?
No. Okay. So I went and I bought Akihiko a weapon.
Nice.
Because all his other items seemed relatively in line with what I had. So I didn't have a ton of money, so I just bought him a weapon to get his damage up a little more, up to snuff. And then I ended up actually doing the student council. I can't remember what his name is.
Odagiri.
Odagiri, yeah. I ended up hanging out with Odagiri for the first time and did my first student council thing because I thought, you know what? I just made Mitsuru happy, so I'll go make her happier and do the student council. And did that. Just got that up to rank 2. So that was the first time I've ever done that one.
I also hung out with Odagiri, funny enough, for this day, which is definitely not... I don't think the game intends you to do that in any way. That's very funny we both did it, but...
Yeah.
It's a... So you've hung out with him the first time. We can definitely talk about that one as it goes further. As you said, it's a little bit linked to... Mitsuru, also to Chihiro to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It's, but mostly focused on Odagiri. You get a little bit of a sense of him, right?
Another example of, we do get a sense of him being very like sort of rigid and for the rules and order, right? And without too many spoilers, it's another example of one where you sort of just have to say the thing that they want to hear because he's talking about how some students want to ban uniforms. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fine. But I said in the game, like, how ridiculous. And he was like, I know, right?
Yeah, you really need to tell him you're the boss is pretty much. Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad we both weirdly had the same afternoon. What did you do in the evening? But before we get to that, I forgot.
Yeah.
We have the introduction of a thing I was almost going to mention earlier. Thank God I looked at my notes. We learned that Akutsuki wants to meet us up on the rooftop. And he introduces...
Not sketchy at all?
No, not weird. Not weird at all. And he introduces the garden.
Yeah.
Which...
so this is...
Yeah,
this is a mechanic I'm glad to see not return, but like still in this iteration of Persona, which is you can plant seeds on the roof. There's a rooftop garden, and you plant seeds, and it grows vegetables. They take a certain amount of time. I think it gives you tomato seeds at the start, and they're going to take 10 days to grow, right? And then harvest vegetables. And I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume that's what that little plant store symbol means on the map. So I'm excited to see what that shop is, maybe if it opens.
Are you referring to at the port station?
No.
Okay, which one are you?
There was one in the mall that's the plant symbol. But maybe there's also, I guess there's also a flower shop at a different place.
So maybe... the flower shop I would.
Oh, that's where I'm supposed to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm with you too. What's funny is I was thinking a lot about it. I didn't garden much in Persona 5 just because it comes in so late. I forgot about it. I was just so focused on everything else. It kind of passed my focal point of like interest. But man, you gotta stick with the gardening here. For everyone, it is worth it. You will get some good items if you do this.
Yeah, gardening in Royal was better than in base Persona 2 because I think that's when they gave you like Haru's confidant links would speed it up or give you more improvements, I think is something they added for Royal, if I'm remembering that correctly.
It sounds vaguely correct. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm it's cool to see it introduced so much earlier in this, so I'm excited to focus on that more too.
Yeah, it's really helpful to have, I think, this early on. You'll get some great items for it. Keep up with it. If you ever forget perhaps how long until your next gardening, I know how to speak, may I recommend going to the bathroom. If you've not gone to the bathroom in Persona 3 Reload yet, just go take a poop. See how it goes. I always imagine he's going just taking a 20-minute dump. That's what I assume. He leads a busy life. We know how much this man eats. Anyway, what did you do with the rest of your evening after planting?
Well, first I talked to Junpei, who was very sad and just wanted to be left alone, which I thought was very, very sad as well.
He's having a bummer night.
And then I just worked at the cafe because, again, I don't have a lot of money. I didn't want to go to Tartarus quite yet. And the cafe gives you 2 stat points for negative dollars rather than a lot of other things, which are like 1 stat point for positive dollars. So, yeah. Hard to beat.
No, it is a great early game stat booster. I can't. Yeah, you're definitely on the level with that one. It's so helpful. I did the muscle boot camp just because, again,
cool.
running through those URLs like you do. 1 URL an evening. That's all you do. And that's the week. We made it.
We did it.
We solved it. The lighting behind me is changing drastically, I think because I have the window open next to me for viewers and the sun is setting, so that's not helping me at all. So it looks like I'm going through some stuff.
You're suddenly turning blue.
Yeah, I'm turning violet. But no, it's a quick week. I think I am turning violet. Okay, am I getting sick and I don't know it? Anyway, we had a quick week here, obviously, but that is midterms. Spoilers, there will be other tests in the future, especially for Persona fans who know Persona. We'll get through them as we do. Again, it might make the schedule a little more wonky. We're going to go back to a normal schedule, I think, from here. Or I guess, I know we said that we were, but now that I'm doing the math, does that throw everything off? Or no? Now I don't know how numbers work. I don't think so.
No.
We haven't set ourselves permanently on a wrong number, have we?
No, we're good. This is by doing it this way, we're back on the way we were. Yes. We did negative one day and then positive one day.
There we go. Yeah, we subtracted from one over there, did a positive over here. Tom, you vamp for a second while I shut my blind.
Yeah, so we should be on the next week just to touch on it now. We're going to take some questions, but the next week I believe we're going to be going from the 26th through to the 1st, and then the following week the 2nd through to the 8th. So just sort of a normal 1-week schedule going forward.
Yes, yeah. For the time being, back to a normal 7 days, normal week. Nothing changes for now, but we'll let you know if that adjusts. But yeah, as you mentioned, we do have plenty of wonderful questions from over at the Patreon. That is, of course, patreon.com/takeyourtime, where our wonderful, wonderful community has written in with some questions, some nice check-in ones, some generalist questions, a whole grab bag that I have assembled for us to go into. Tom, I will be frank, I'm sorry you're going to have a lot of duty here because a lot of them are pointed at you because I've played the game.
Fair enough.
So if your answers are bad, it's going to look bad, man. You better be thoughtful.
Well, as we established, at least 20 minutes of duty.
There we go. Another catchphrase for the show, at least 20 minutes of duty, guaranteed with every episode. I mean, look, where else are people listening to podcasts these days? Work from home, yada, yada. Anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
The first one comes from Mitch. Mitch wrote, also, I want to say, you're going to notice a pattern in these questions. I'm not going to say it yet, but let me know if you do, because I love it. Just to show about our fandom. Mitch wrote, hi, friends. So happy having you back in the podcast rotation. Tom, one thing I'm curious about is any preconceived notions or ideas you have heard about the P3 story going forward. I finished it for the first time a few months ago and was interested to see how it lived up to its reputation. What have you heard, and are there any specific things that you expect? I guess maybe not spoiling it if you have been, spoiled. We don't want to do that for our audience, but...
Yeah, so I'm very grateful that I haven't had anything specific spoiled for me. I don't know very much at all about the characters or any sort of story specifics of what happens. I know, who some of the characters are. Like, I know that there is a dog, for example, and one other sort of a little bit of a weird one that I won't say here if people don't know it, but I don't know how you befriend the dog or why the dog knows the dark hour, I really am in the dark with a lot of that, which I'm glad about. And then as for preconceived stuff, the one thing I did hear is, I know this is a lot of people's favorite Persona story, and I also know that it is one of the heavier ones in that it has some real themes of death and loss and, overcoming that. And so that's something I do know. And beyond that, I don't know if I have any preconceived notions going into that, though. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm looking forward to, see why people have it in such high regard, because, not to write it off at the beginning, but, it's early. We're still very much establishing these characters and what's happening, and we haven't really gotten into the meat of anything yet, or, there's been some emotional stuff, but it hasn't really hit on that stuff yet. And that's not saying it's not going to. It's just I'm excited to see it go where I've heard people talk about, how much they love it and how heavy it is.
Yeah, to that point, I feel like going into this for me too, because I don't think this spoils, how I feel about it ultimately, but I was given a very similar spiel of, I feel like Persona 3 is everyone's favorite, or not everyone, but the generally conceived favorite story. 4 is like the generally favorite group. Like everyone really likes the vibe of the gang. It's very like Scooby Gang to my understanding. And then Persona 5 is kind of like the best overall package because it's I think the biggest game. It has the most modern updates to it. It kind of takes all that stuff into consideration. That's kind of how I've always understood it. Obviously, people do have their favorites that are not 3, 4, or 5 necessarily, like for those reasons, but that's kind of the generalist idea I get. Which is fair.
Yeah, that's about my perception too.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes from there. What's funny is, though, you mentioned, being where we are in the game. I'm going to jump to a different question. Francis, who wrote in, did mention they went and looked back at the podcast list for our P5R run. Episode 6 is titled Madarame and Midterms. Which one? Funny that episode 6 and episode 6 is going to be midterms. But it's just a very interesting kind of, knowing where we were early on. We were already at Madarame.
Yeah, that's nuts to me.
Yeah. That kind of blew my mind.
That's pretty crazy to think about how it does feel like a lot less has happened in this one.
Yeah. Francis asked, how do we feel compared 6 weeks in? And I do think it shows that they are very different stories
they're very, very different stories, very different structures, very different games. And again, we've talked about this previously. That does not mean better or worse in one way or the other. I think I'm way too early still to determine which one I prefer between those two structures, but it is really interesting to hear that it's that sort of, I do consider basically everything that happened in the first Palace of P5 as being a lot more story than even what we've seen so far in P3. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's really fun. Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, really? Because it is just a different feeling to... I think we spoke about it maybe last week or the week before. 5 is very much a game of mini arcs that build to crescendos for each one, where this is not doing the same thing. And that, again, to your point, doesn't mean it's doing a worse thing. It's just doing a different thing.
Yeah. And like, it also means we didn't have nearly as much exposition and waiting through Morgana telling you to go to sleep, right?
Exactly.
It's a give and take.
Yeah, no, totally. It's it'll be interesting to see. I would love whoever out there wants to do that when we get to kind of these check-in episodes where we have a little time. And I'll kind of keep track as well. I would love to see the difference in arcs as we go. But anyway, moving on from there, Damon said, "Hi, Jonathan and Tom. I've been thinking about something in Persona 5 Royal and Persona 3 Reload. During some of the smaller confidant cutscenes and events, the lack of voice acting and the fixed camera with minimal animation can feel a bit jarring. Have you noticed this, or do you have any thoughts of it? I understand the scope of these games are incredible, but I can't help but wish for more spoken voice lines and detailed animations beyond just them kind of standing still with hand gestures." I have thoughts, but I've been able to, I gathered the questions, so I prepped them. So I'm happy to jump in if you want to think, or if you want to go off the cuff, go for it.
No, yeah, I mean, I think this is a symptom of basically every big RPG I've ever played, is that they have to, we talked about this previously, of the idea of, anime's got to figure out where they're spending their budget, right? And this is a similar thing to me, of voice acting takes a lot of time and budget and is a complex thing, and so they got to figure out where they're spending that money and that production time. I would say I think P3 is less noticeable in that regard than a lot of the RPGs I've played. I think it has an impressive amount of voice acting compared to some RPGs where you get voice acting in the big cutscenes only, and then it's all text beyond that. So I think in that regard, I don't find P3's balance of it distracting necessarily, but I also do completely agree that it is always a bummer when that ratio feels off one way or the other, or when you get a big block of voiceless stuff for a long time.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. It is, I think, unfortunately, a symptom of, and we talked about this a little bit in a prior week, of just other aspects of the game, but just probably a budget concern. As you said, they have to figure out where they're putting their money, and the lesser scenes are going to get less of a priority for being flashy, because it's just how you have to be able to spend the money, or like where you can actually spend the money. So it is, to your point, when you have a big chunk and you're not getting any, it feels like, no, but I love the performances so much and the writing is good, so I want to hear that. And I think it's a credit to the game that you want that, because they are so good. Last thing you want is a terrible game where there's too much. But yeah.
Like, thinking comparison to Royal, I think all of the rank up confidant scenes in this one are voiced.
Yes.
Whereas in Royal, it was just the first and the last one, I believe.
Ooh, I don't remember off the top of my head, and I've said enough wrong on this show that I'm not going to jump in there. But
because I seem to remember not remembering what certain confidants' voices sounded like some of the minor ones.
That's
fair.
And
then you get to that rank 10 one, and it's suddenly voiced, and you're like, who is this person? It was very, so correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that this one has more in that regard for those confidant scenes.
I always think of it, just because it was my first real impression of this, as like the Kingdom Hearts effect. Like in Kingdom Hearts, especially the early ones, there were kind of 3 tiers of beautifully animated cutscenes. I always remember this about like characters' mouths and faces, where it's like beautifully animated cutscenes where it's super detailed, voiced and pretty good, but very clearly in-engine cutscenes. And then I'm talking very slowly, but though my mouth is just moving up and down, like just very, very basic animation with no VO. There were tiers, basically, is how I think scenes get dumped into.
And that's not just a Kingdom Hearts thing, right? Like, I've been playing more recently Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, right? And that has the exact same thing, where you have these dialogue-only scenes, these voice scenes that are in-engine, and then actual cutscenes. And you can very clearly tell they were picking where to spend their time and money in that regard.
Yeah. To that point, I'm very curious to see, because it's such a different-looking game, where that falls for Metaphor ReFantazio. But yeah,
sure.
I'm curious to see what the levels are, since it's not just like a daily school game. So we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, thank you for that question. Damon, moving on from there, Dale asked, "Hey guys, can we talk about how flashy this game is, specifically in combat, Every animation feels like it is shiny and smooth. I'm a big fan of the speed and flow of combat and how it looks while it's happening. Not to mention the baton pass coming over from P5 Royal. It has made Tartarus feel addictive and fun every time I've gone in. What do you guys like most specifically about the presentation and flashiness of the remake so far?
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about this game's UI, that is I don't know how much of it is classic, but there are definitely parts of it that feel portable, right? That feel like they were made for a smaller screen, I guess is the right way to put it, where all of it's a little bit bigger, right? It's a little bit blockier, it's a little less busy. And I don't dislike any of that. I think that we've already talked about, the evoker shots in combat when you hit a weakness are just so cool. Those are so hard to beat
I'll never
in
get
terms of
over
visuals.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really digging the UI and the visuals. I agree. It all just does look shiny and smooth.
Yeah, I think for something that where a lot of the UI obviously feels, it is that weird back and forth, but feels inspired by the success of what people loved about P5's UI and the momentum there. I think they do a good job at acclimating it to a different game where it's not just here it is but blue, but there are very different kind of geometry uses here and color palettes and things of that nature. I do think it's pulled off well in that regard.
It's something that I noticed literally just last time I went into Tartarus was the little character portraits off to the side that are the 2D character portraits of your party will react when they get hit or will have little unique, and I just never even looked at those because they're just off to the side and I was focused on the 3D. But yeah, watch those little portraits and they're really emotive. Yeah. Even though they're just this tiny little thing off to the side.
No, it's great. I think for a game that clearly is a little bit smaller in scope than P5, it does feel like they found every little bit where they could put details in and where it made sense without changing the fundamentals of what this game was. They found clever ways to do that, and it really works. The evoker stuff is great. Without spoiling it, there is a thing that I'll bring up probably in the next couple weeks that I really love as well, but we'll get there when we get there. But it's just a flashiness thing. This is a good thing, I think, to revisit in, 6 to 8 weeks when we have other stuff to talk about. But good question. Thank you for that one as well. Panorami, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, wrote in and said, Hi, a bit of a side question, but one I was curious about. If you guys take notes while playing the game, how do you prefer to do that, or what works best for you? Since it's my first time playing P3, I've set up a Notion page to keep track of social link availability, any requests I'm getting from Elizabeth, things I want to do on specific days, things like that. I find taking notes and keeping track of things like this helps me engage more with whatever I'm playing, especially if it's an RPG like this one, so I was curious what you guys do. And I do know a lot of people who do use, create Notion boards. That is definitely a thing that I've heard about from people for big games like this to keep track.
I like that.
How do you... I guess we've actually never really talked about it, but how do you keep track of what you're doing?
So I don't keep track of day availability. I thought about doing that, but then it just sounded like homework. No, not blaming you for doing it or saying you shouldn't. Just it was one of those things where I thought about it and I was like, no, I'm just gonna go to bed. Instead of doing that and just kind of play it by ear. I did want this playthrough, my first playthrough of this, to be more off the cuff, more just sort of based on instinct rather than trying to really min-max anything. And so I didn't want to overthink it necessarily. But I think that would be a valuable thing to do if you were really trying to, be precise about that sort of stuff. My note method is different than when I did P5 for some reason. When I did P5, I had a Google spreadsheet, and I had every day marked, and then I had a column for the, kind of basic tasks that I did that day, the things I did, and then I had another column for side notes and that sort of thing, and then I had another column for pop quiz possible answer or questions and that sort of thing. This time I'm just using a Google Doc where I just have the day, because there's a lot less I'm finding there's a lot less to keep track of day to day in this one. So I just sort of do the day and do bullet points and then break out extra bullet points for things I want to go into a little more detail on. And I just take notes on my phone as I play, either what I'm doing or interesting things, and then for a little more behind the scenes, while recording, I have my camera, I have one monitor with Jonathan on it, and then I have another monitor with our run of show on one half of the monitor and my note doc on the other half of the monitor, so that I can kind of compare and keep going as we go.
I am not too dissimilar from you in terms of talking about this game specifically for what I'm doing. I did this with P5 and I'm doing it the same here. I guess it's a little more maybe chaotic neutral because I just keep running notes in the iPhone Notes app of each.
Okay.
I do a new note per month, and then I just kind of like do subheads of like week 1, and then I'll do like the date, what I did each day, and then just write other random notes of like if there was a conversation that really grabbed me, information about that conversation, character appearances, introductions, new gameplay mechanics. I'll just kind of write those as I'm going.
I take a lot of phone pictures of my screen. If there's a conversation I need to remember, I'll do the just old man taking a picture of the screen.
I'm going to call you out on this because what's really funny is I remember a time at IGN where I did that to ask you for help on a PC.
Yeah.
And I sent that to you.
Took a picture of your screen and sent it to me over Slack.
Yeah, and you were like, you old man. And I was like, no wonder you're having a problem. But no, that's really funny. Yeah, I usually take a PS5. Since I'm playing there, I'll just hit the screen save, like share button if there's a screenshot I want. But yeah, it's pretty much day by day. Here's the afternoon, the evening, and then just other details as we go. I just in general don't take a lot of notes while I play games. Again, to Tom's point, not because I knock the system of it. I know people who do it a lot. I like the system that you're using, that you mentioned with the Notion. I think all of that's really great. I will be frank, I have really bad attention problems when it comes to a second screen. And if I have that with me, it will derail my game time. Like I will just not. I am very, very bad at, even if I am playing a game I am loving, I will hop over to look at my email. I will check if I got a Discord message. I will somehow end up on TikTok. Like I am just really bad at that. And I have had to train myself to stop doing that by just putting the phone away. So I used to take some notes and I used to keep thoughts going down. What I've now turned to, and I've only just started doing it this year, so it's very light for me, is I have started slightly just doing like journal notes. Like I have like a small notebook with me and I'll write some notes in there about games I'm playing and things I'm liking and stuff like that. Especially because I'm not writing about games currently. So it's just a different, like, I still like flexing that muscle and still thinking about games that way. So it's a nice avenue for that doesn't tie me to a screen that might distract me from the thing I'm enjoying. But yeah.
Yeah, I respect that.
So I recognize the problem and I have worked to fix it. But yeah, it's I would love to hear if other people have methods.
I guess I will say that too. If I wasn't doing the show, I wouldn't be taking notes. I basically only take notes if I am reviewing a game or doing this show. And then otherwise I just sort of, or if it's like, a puzzle game where you have to write a bunch of stuff down. Like I'm playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes right now, which is a very fun puzzle game that has come out recently. And, I'm taking a lot of notes for that because it's a complex game.
Oh yeah, the scattered pages of Obra-Did notes we had when I played that was just a blast.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would like to take a little bit more notes when it comes to games, just as sort of an archival record. But yeah, to your point, I'm often trying to really be good about focusing on the game, so that is just why, for my attention needs, it's bad to have that second screen. But whatever works for you works for you. So yeah. Thank you for that peek behind the curtain question. How are we doing on time? Are you good for one or two more?
Yeah, I'm good. Cool. Throw them at us.
Perfect. Mike asked, I am playing New Game Plus and struggling to engage with the game again in this format. I really like this game, but it is different in New Game Plus. We won't get into spoilers, of course. I'm considering starting over since we are all still early and the achievements in this game don't feel exceptionally challenging. This is from Mike, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. I might have just jumped right in. But Mike said all this. Mike also said, what are your, to be fair, I'm playing on normal difficulty and I'm not looking to feel frustrated, but what are your thoughts on New Game Plus or achievement hunting in general? Royal was really challenging with so much to do that kept the replay fun for me. I like checking in on the list at the Thieves' Den, but right now I feel like I'm just waiting to max out the confidants I missed last run and looking up the list online. And yeah, they also opened that to everyone else. But yeah, still loving the game, but they said, even if the ramen doesn't make me smart anymore. But yeah, I have very different thoughts, I guess, about what like New Game Plus and achievement hunting, trophy hunting specifically. I don't know. I could just jump in, but
I mean, I can do mine really quick.
Yeah,
go
go
it's
for it.
easy. I basically never, unless a game has deep hooks in me, I never trophy hunt, and I very rarely go back for New Game Plus. Persona 5, I beat Persona 5, and then I beat Royal, and then I beat Royal again for the show, and that's like the only game I have replayed like that in maybe, the last decade, right? I really just don't do that very often. So that's my quick answer, is like neither of those things, just in my own sensibilities, are not very interesting to me.
Yeah. For me, it's weird because I am a self-admitted like trophy hunter. I've done it a fair bit. I like doing it to a certain extent, but I've also accepted I don't need to do it if I'm not having fun. The second the trophy hunting starts becoming a like real chore, I'm out. It's fine. I've learned to accept it. My time is precious and finite, and I like the virtual trophies, but they don't matter to me that much. So
Sure.
I will enjoy it up to a point, or if I feel like it's achievable and I've loved a game. Like if I've really loved a game and I'm 2 trophies away and it's easy to get them. If a game has like chapter select or things like that where you can easily go back, I'll do that pretty well. Because if I like a game, I just kind of like having that as a sort of virtual memento kind of thing to it. But I will stop myself to a point, and honestly, that point most of the time is New Game Plus. I am sort of with you. There are too many games I want to play that most of the time these days, the act of replaying a game is exceptionally rare for me as well.
Yeah. You know what? The only game I think I've really... I did get the platinum in Royal because that platinum was pretty easy.
It's achievable. The Royal's easy.
You really didn't have to go very far out of your way to like plan around it.
Yeah.
The game I did go hard on getting all of the achievements for on Steam was Hades. I got every single Hades achievement, and I was very, very proud of that.
That one's good.
Hades is a game you're supposed to replay endlessly. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I have... I think we've gotten all of the achievements for Vampire Survivors twice, because we played it through on Xbox all the way and then on Switch all the way. Just because I like playing that game. It's just a fun, thing to replay endlessly as well. But yeah, it's I'm glad it's a thing that is in most modern games, because I do know there are people who love that. But for me, when there are just so many amazing, new, interesting games to play, it's a far cry from back in the day when I played the Spyro and Crash trilogy 24 times because I just wanted to keep doing it. It's like I just want to see new experiences. I want to try new games, and New Game Plus, especially too close to a game, is just not what I'm looking for most of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel that.
We thank you for playing along with this game, though. But again, if it ever becomes a chore, you can just listen. No one's going to judge you.
True.
Moving on from there, quickly, just to wrap things up for a last couple, Dexter said, what kind of accessories do you guys use? I find myself with a bit of choice paralysis, given all the ones you acquire over the course of the initial Tartarus run. I for what it's worth, just go back and forth either between whatever gets me the highest stat bonuses, or if I know someone has a weakness and there is an item that helps combat that weakness.
I think that's fair. That's basically what I do too. Although I will sometimes use the max SP up as well.
That's a good one. Yeah, there's a few in here that can raise your HP and SP by quite a fair bit, and it comes in handy sometimes. So yeah, those aren't bad to use. But for the most part, just whatever is going to help me the most in the moment. I cycle through. I'm not really married to any particular ones.
And I also fully ignore like the ones. I think I got 2 items. One was like lightly reduce slashing damage and lightly reduce like the punch damage. I don't remember what that one's called.
That's fair.
And those ones I put very, very little stock in, because it's such a slim amount of time that's going to matter. And then on top of that, like you said, Jonathan, unless they have a weakness to that, it's like, why do you care? I don't know.
Exactly. No, I get where you're coming from. But yeah, curious to hear what those out there use. If you have a certain method or plan, Dexter or anyone else in the community, let us know in the comments. Moving on from there, Amy also just asked, have you guys noticed that a lot of the background characters, like NPC school kids, who have voice lines are voiced by some of the P5 cast? My girlfriend and I like to try and match the voice to the Phantom Thief. So far, we've heard Morgana, An, Makoto, Kawakami, and Joker. I love to hear Xander Mobus exclaiming about something, knowing it's probably more voice acting range than he got to do as Joker. I hypothesize they did the VA work for P3 at the same time they were doing Tactica, which could be. I don't know the timing of these, but it's a good guess. But I will say I didn't notice a ton specifically, but I was like, oh, I recognize a voice or two. And if you look it up, it's like, oh, sure enough, that's who that was.
Yeah, I noticed Makoto actually just in this last week, but as a side character. Yeah, I always like recognizing these things or those people, and Atlas I think is definitely a company, or Sega in general is a company that likes, like if you play the Like a Dragon or Yakuza games, you'll recognize a ton of voices from Persona as well in those. So I think Sega just has some people they like working with that they revisit for sure.
Yeah, it's fun when you get that rotating familiar cast. Mm-hmm. Moving on from there, last but not least, Astral Clock Tower asked, food seems so central in Persona 5 and 3, especially in building social links, which is a nice nod to IRL interactions. Have you guys ever been tempted to try something different because you've seen it in Persona, like weird takoyaki, or had a go at making something like the LeBlanc curry, or just eaten unhealthy amounts of ramen? I did actually make the LeBlanc curry once, which was tasty and looked very similar, although had to yell, "Let me explain," when I added each ingredient. Perhaps I should try and recreate Wakatsu Kitchen's Prodigy Platter and see if it boosts my academics. I was just curious to hear if you have, because I will say I have not, but I have wanted to, and I've just not made the leap.
Oh, P5 would frequently influence my dinner decisions.
That's fair.
We would play Persona and then immediately need to go get ramen that week or something like that. Or, and yeah, I've made curry. I've made Japanese curry a few times just using the sort of, not literally bouillon, but you can buy like packaged golden curry cubes that you just throw into, you boil and cook the vegetables and then put water in and throw these cubes in, and it works pretty well. And I definitely, it's not LeBlanc curry. I'm a vegetarian, so obviously it's not meaty, but yeah, I've done that a bunch of times, and I really enjoy it. And I've used tricks from the game, so I didn't do their exact recipe, but I've grated apple into my curry as which is a thing they mentioned in the game. I put dark chocolate in it too, which I think is another thing they mentioned in the game, or maybe that was a trick from outside. But yeah, there's little things here and there that the LeBlanc curry. Basically every time they talked about curry in that game, me and my wife were like, we should make curry. So, yeah.
Without fail, that game made me hungry all the time. Like being in there. I think for me, if anything, what Persona 5 did was really ignite my love of coffee, and just thinking about the ritual of coffee and caring about the beans that I'm using, the process of making it, of grinding the beans at home, of, taking the actual time to go through the little process of making it, where as is probably a trend with a lot of people these days, like very espresso based right now. So I've really focused on that kind of process, but it gave me an appreciation for that. Whereas prior to that, coffee was fuel. It was just what I put in my body to stay awake. So it helped me in that regard, like earn an appreciation for it. But yeah, I've always, I think, just been scared to try my hand at recipes that I feel like I'm just going to mess up badly, but always made me hungry.
Here's what I'll say for anybody who has not made Japanese style curry like that. If you get the packaged golden curry, just packaged things, and just accept that you're never going to make it, like they do in Japan, it's really simple actually, because it's basically just like braising whatever your protein is, and then cooking some carrots and onions and potato maybe, and that's it, and then putting water and curry in. It is really, really simple, in my experience at least, and it generally tastes very good no matter what you do, because all of the flavor is in that little packet.
Nice. That's good to know. Well, if I ever do, I'll report back. But no, thank you for that question, Astral.
And then you can start experimenting, because then I put like honey in, I put sriracha, I put dark chocolate, grated apple. There's so many fun things you can do.
That's fun. I like that it's such a versatile dish in that regard.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I think, it's a theme we didn't maybe talk about a ton with P5, and maybe we can explore it at some point here, but I do really appreciate how true to life it is of how much a communal gathering, an importance of sharing a meal with another person is in the game as it is in real life. It's nice that it translates that well, I think.
If only there was room in the refrigerator.
If only, but unfortunately, we'll have to wait another week to find out about that. Thank you to everyone who wrote in with their questions. Again, if you would like to submit questions for future weeks, where we'll probably have a little less time, but then we might also have a lot of time. We'll find out. You can join the wonderful group of patrons over at patreon.com/takeyourtime and join up with everyone there. But yeah, that's going to pretty much do us for this week. But before we go, of course, Tom, you got a pop quiz.
I do. This is a very, it's going to be a hard one, I think, but it's also a funny one. Ikutski brings you up to the garden to teach you about the garden, and ends this lecture about the garden and how he wants you to tend to it with just a machine gun fire of puns. So the question is, in the last 2 sentences of that conversation, of that scene, how many puns does Ikutski make? That's the pop quiz question for next week. You could write your answer in at youtube.com/Dornology, at patreon.com/takeyourtime, dornology@gmail.com, or message us on socials. He's at JamDornbush. I'm at Tom Marks.
You handled it for me. It's like I'm not even here. I have a number in mind, so that's what I'm going to stick with. We'll find out if I'm right. But yeah, write in with your answers. And if you have your own puns, write in with them as well. But yeah, that was yet another week. As we mentioned, next week we're going to be doing, it will be May, I almost said April again, 26th through June 1st.
Yes.
Correct. And that is the next week of Persona that we'll go through, so play along with us as you can. And thank you again for tuning in, listening, watching, wherever you jump in for the show. We appreciate it so much. Your support is just wonderful to see week in, week out. It means the world to us. And don't forget to spread the word. If you enjoy the show, leave a review, leave 5 stars, rate it, give it a thumbs up, whatever the platform you have that you tell the algorithm that the thing you are enjoying is good. Go do that thing. We appreciate it. And just tell your friends. Just, hey, at one point this week, go share a meal with someone and tell them about the show that you enjoy. It's guerrilla marketing in that way. But no, thank you to everyone, as always, for your continued support. It means so much to us. Congratulations on getting through midterms, and we'll see you next week.